Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the 50-year celebrations of the Faculty Research Forum. A special word of welcome to our distinguished guest and evaluation committee, and then also a special welcome to Professor Francois Strydom for presenting today's invitation lecture. Before we get to the lecture, just a few arrangements. We found a cell phone in the hallway in front of the kidney, if it's anyone here. Then this session is accredited for CPD points, so please complete that little attendance forms and drop them in the box in front of the venue. And then following this invitation lecture, the forum will continue as two parallel sessions at more or less 8:35. The one session being the clinical papers presented here in Kini 1 and the other being the laboratory papers presented in Kini 2. This morning we are honored to have Professor Francois Strydom here to present the invitation lecture titled Restructuring Universities Using Data. Teaching and learning is one of the main activities of a university and can only be improved through research that generate good data. Professor Francois Strydom is the Senior Director at the Center for Teaching and Learning at this university, and his teaching and learning experience spanned over 20 years. Recently, he was the project leader for the South African Survey of Student Engagement, as well as for the College Survey of Student Engagement. His research influenced several quality assurance practices in higher education. Professor Strydom also received several research grants, awards, and published several papers on higher education issues. His research interests include student engagement and improving teaching and learning in higher education institutions. So let's extend a warm welcome to Professor Strydom.
Is this on? There we go. Okay. It is a singular pleasure to be part of this celebration. I have a deep roots at the University of the Free State, but in this faculty, I've got family members that went through the faculty. So I always enjoy talking here. As a student and a very proud nerd, I would move between the library where our offices is now and the Frick Scott, and I so enjoyed sitting there yesterday working again, embracing my nerddom. Right. I think the issues I want to talk to you about today is based on national work that we've been doing for more than 11 years. It's not just national work. We've been working with American, Australian colleagues also for about that long. I am giving you a national data picture. Do not assume that national data don't apply to your faculty. Don't do the thing many academics like to do. Those are not our students, all right? But we'll talk, my intention is to create in you a interest in how data can help you design differently. Design thinking is now very prevalent. I don't need to talk to healthcare providers about how design thinking has changed things like the MRI, how data and the use of data help to change those approaches. What should new universities look like? If we talk about physical design, on the my very right is what university libraries should be. The books have been replaced by screens. There should be places that there's learning. Um, uh, what our classroom should be, you maybe not see it in the black and white, but there's whiteboards everywhere. One of the new phenomena we see now is all tables in libraries have are whiteboards, so students can sit around and explain with white markers to each other problems, and then it just gets wiped clean for the next student group to use. Right. What has stayed the same is the aspiration. Right. Let me ask one question as I transition. How many of you were the first to get a university degree in your family? How many of you? Good. Thank you. I see there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? You're not a representative sample in terms of our students today. In the higher education system, 70 to 80% are first generation students. If you're sitting next to a first generation student in this presentation, count yourself lucky, right? We'll talk a little bit about three key challenges. I'll talk about global challenges, and then I'll focus on three things: the impact of financial strain on student life, improving student success, and then developing graduate attributes related to employability. And then finally, I'll share 5 principles which I think can help inform how we should design our institutions. So, we talk a lot about many challenges. Like yesterday's papers highlighted some international challenges. Most of them had more of a local focus and a national focus. A new study in 2018 of 20,000 students at 35 universities in 14 states found the following: 36% of students were food insecure, 36% of them were housing insecure, and 9% of them was homeless. We expected this from the wonderful America, right? We're very busy with where our students come from. We're so different. We're isolated from the world. We don't have the same problems. University of the Free State's research was cited by Sarah Goldrick-Rapp from Temple University. She's the researcher who did this work for the Kresge Foundation. The United Kingdom has now created an office for students which is trying to deeply understand what are the issues facing students and how can one help them um, succeed better. So why should we design for students? Why should we do that? Are we focusing too much on students? So I'll give you a quote from Edward Deming, that says, every system is exactly designed to get the results that it gets. If the core of our work is training a next generation of leaders, because that's what higher education is, it's the engine of the leaders of the world, right? And we don't take the students into consideration when we design. What results are you going to get? We can talk, if there's time, about the psychology and the impact for lecturers, but there's so much I need to talk about. Let's move. Universities of South Africa, if you thought it's only the UK and Australia dealing with, the UK and America dealing with these issues, there's now a sector-wide project to which we're preparing reports for them. They've been going out through University World News on how can we put students at the center of how we think about our institutions and take account of their lived experience. I've talked about the 3 challenges. What is critical, and people in health sciences should be aware of this approach, is that we have to follow an evidence-based approach. Evidence-based diagnostics and so on is something that's not new, like evidence-based teaching is something that's newish in education. But we cannot build effective systems, effective classrooms, effective universities if we don't look at the data. And don't just, I'm going to show mostly quantitative data because I do survey work, but that does not exclude some of the wonderful qualitative data which I had the privilege to listen to yesterday. So let's jump into financial strain. I'm going to give you data from several of the suite of student engagement questionnaires. You can ask me in question time if you want more background. Here we asked, in the last year, were there any times when you ran out of food and could not afford to buy any more? You can see that 70% of students in that given year at some point was hungry, right? 24% of them most days or every day. But Francois, we looked at this, and this is not really a problem in the faculty. Really? How big a problem is it? A 30% problem? A 40% problem? If you think about the whole faculty, not just one group in the faculty. I have chosen not to buy academic materials due to the cost. 68% of students opt not to buy academic materials. This, of course, creates a very big challenge for us because if you can't have the material to interact with, how are you going to develop into a professional? The challenge for us and the challenge globally, we are part of conversations or have been observers and part of conversations where open educational resources is the way to go because it cuts out the phenomenal costs. In the conferences that I speak at or I'm on panels, textbooks costs is now one of the core challenges for student success because students in America can't afford the textbooks. All right. I have chosen to participate in academic and social. I have not chosen to participate. Here you can see 62% of students say they choose not to participate in certain activities because they don't have the money. So, how do we build inclusive cultures in a faculty at a university? If we want everybody to have the same t shirt, but people don't have money for t shirts, how do we create activities that draw people in? Yesterday, we had a conversation at the educational papers about the social integration, how incredibly important that is. Here, we created an intersectional analysis looking at how often do you worry about university versus your financial stress and what it does with your academic performance. Look at the blue line. If I worry every day, 44% of students indicate that that has a negative impact on my academics. And we've got the national data. We're one of the only national data sources, the SASI, that has given an indication just how much the stress is in the system for our students. And it's not a black and white thing, it's a student thing. It's more for black students, but it's definitely not just a black student thing. Right? These are the people that sit in your classes. So, I was not only going to talk about the challenges. Throughout the presentation, I wanted to give you examples of where redesign is taking place in the system, that you are aware of it. So for all the wards, feast must fall did us a phenomenal amount of favors in terms of innovation and progressive thinking. And one of those is that it very strongly put on the agenda how much financial stress negatively affects students and that the state needs to look at it differently. You saw yesterday, again, that our fantastic new minister, Naledi Pandor, is really cracking the whip to get NSFAS into shape. Right. National or institutional feeding schemes. Most universities, including our own, have feeding schemes now for students. Should we have a national feeding scheme is what we are asking in national conversations. Should there be faculty ones in this faculty specifically? You certainly have got the expertise to think in a complex way about this. Then in the private sector, there's now crowdfunding. If you go on phoenix.org by Standard Bank, you can pick a student and you can help fund that student. And they've just raised 17 million rand. Improving student success, I don't need to tell you that this is a very big challenge. We need to balance the diversity, and I'm not, when I talk about diversity, race is the last thing on my mind. Diversity in terms of preparation levels, in terms of what students' learning preferences are. That diversity in our classroom, in this very audience. How do we deal with that? Academic quality, excellence, and getting a balance between those things. We are regarded, for better or for worse, as the engine rooms for human capacity, for a knowledge economy, and now the much talked about fourth industrial revolution. So I'm going to look at four components. The first one is the transition conversation. Excellent conversations yesterday around how do we grapple with the freshman myth. Now, what's the freshman myth? If you look here, we asked students how difficult did they think university was going to be. This is first years, by the way. They say it's going to be about a 27 out of 60. And when we ask them how prepared they are, they say I'm about a 48 out of 60. This is what we know since the 1960s as the freshman myth. Students think they are more overprepared. Many of you can remember what it was like to be 18. Everybody else was an idiot, and you could do anything. Right? Academic perseverance. Our students say they want to persevere. Resilience conversations yesterday. I mentioned there the work of Tlatjaju and Jama yesterday that we listened to. How do we help students mind this gap? I'll give you some examples. This is a bit small, so don't stress. This is where we ask students about how supportive do they find their environment in the institution to be. Now, what's very important here is that support, if you don't perceive your environment as supportive, your perseverance is undermined because you feel alone, right? So, if support initiatives make me feel stigmatized or don't create an environment that draws me in, my perseverance is undermined, right? This picking yourself up by your bootstraps. There's a lot of Hollywood's myths. Usually, success for any individual is a village phenomenon, right? A lot of people help you. Lots of data in yesterday's conversations. So what we see here is the biggest gaps are in the middle here around students saying they expected, the blue bar, that they wanted to have interaction with people that are different from them. But in reality, the SASSI data, uh, that wasn't as much as they thought. They also expected or wanted help to deal with their non-academic responsibilities, but they didn't find any. Now I can hear some of you thinking, but we're an academic institution. There's enough work with the academic stress. How now, what's non-academic stuff? I'll put you this challenge. If we don't think about non-academic factors like socioeconomics, students, when we ask them what would make them drop out, the first 5 reasons are socioeconomic. Only then comes academic support. So in our design, do we not need to think? I'm not saying start handing out sanitary pads, food. That's anyway be an incredibly bad way to go about it. But if work-life balance, who in this room struggles with work-life balance? Nobody. Right. So if that's the number one thing you're going to struggle with when you're a professional, why not start helping our students to deal with that? Because for all intents and purposes, their academics is their work. Right. Something which we're concerned about in relation to some of the fees must fall perspectives yesterday. We track quality of relationships, and what you can see here is a decline in the good to excellence relationships and an increase in the poor to fair relationships. We were part of a Carnegie Foundation sponsored study with UCT, UJ, and UP, where one of the things we were looking at how technology, Fees Must Fall really put technology at the forefront in teaching and learning in this country, but it also helped to highlight that relationships were damaged by Fees Must Fall in all 4 of those institutions. How are we going to build strong relationships in our class? Without those relationships, quality suffer. High impact practice. What's a HEAP? A HEAP is a practice that's statistically shown to be very powerful in producing positive outcomes in students. Critical thinking, higher order skills, as well as passing. Right. So there's a range of 13 of them. The 2 highlighted here shows that our system is fairly good at making use of group work for projects and peer learning. We're not so good at undergraduate research examples. In this faculty, I think the practical work experience would be much higher for senior groups, leadership positions, and so forth. Right? Having the right developmental courses, having an academic advisor nationally is not a big phenomenon. These are things we can do better, but I was elated to hear about the student forum, but is that integrated in the curriculum, right? Because when I teach research, I define research as the most sophisticated problem-solving methods in the world. That's what research is to me, right? If you have a serious problem, you do research. The rest you Google. Um, uh, some transition examples, first year experience. Perceptions of institutional support. Here we have Siapumelela. We are part of 5 institutions where we look at data analytics. This means analyzing your student data, knowing to such an extent that you know when your students are struggling with which scores and what support to deploy. And that is done digitally, right? It's not means people are running around chasing students. Are you having a problem? Are you having a problem? It's looking at the data, knowing that in dietetics, this course is difficult for our students, deploy tutorials. Nudge students, use the newest Nobel laureate winners in economics theories to nudge our students in the right direction. A worrying decline in relationships, we need to find solutions for that. We can chat about it. Then University Capacity Development Grant is a national grant. It's about what 700 million rand to promote high impact practices across higher education. We are the leaders in a collaborative projects with 7 institutions to promote academic advising and tutorials as examples of those. Developing graduate attributes. A graduate attribute is those things that employers want to see in people that finish at university. That alignment between global and um, overseas, uh, the alignment between employers and universities is a global issue. Here we look at higher order learning skills according to Bloom. So the first one is application. This is identify analysis. This is evaluation of information, and this is synthesis. Now, the first thing that's worrying here is, would we not like to see higher levels of the higher level skills in our students saying to us, I've learned how to evaluate information and how to integrate things and create new ideas. The other worrying thing in this slide is the blue bar is first years and the red bar is seniors. Why are they so similar? Right? And what does that mean for our curricula? Very good news. Students say, I'm taught to be a critical thinker. I learn how to use computers, work with others, write creatively and effectively, understand students from backgrounds. You can see all of the red bars are high. But interesting things. I'm not 30% of students say, 3 out of 10. I'm not learning how to solve real complex world problems. I don't know how to be an informed citizen. So the conversation is not, we're doing badly. It's how do we do better? Is that the kind of graduate we want? And this is what we argue when we use evidence. Here's some examples of graduate attribute work. CUT, CPUT, Mpwalanga. We've had graduate attributes. We've now just finished this week. We are starting the consultation around a new graduate attribute approach that will align the university with 4,200 institutions internationally. The labor market intelligence partnerships between DET and HSRC is looking at whether we are fine-tuning the link between our supply of skilled workers and what we need in the economy. So what are the principles? I'm going to go a bit over, but not over the 30 minutes, so let's chill. First principle. Student success has to be in your mission and your lived educational philosophy. All your staff need to know their role in student success, and you have to be innovative using evidence, right? Gone are the days of, yes, let's try this, it looks exciting. Resources are scarce. What is the evidence? When we pilot, is the evidence that it works? How do we change it? Principle 2, talent development needs to be the central tenet of an institution's operating philosophy. We cannot create different institutions if we don't fundamentally redesign academic staff development. Our staff have no choice but to teach the students in front of them. They can make themselves unhappy constantly if I'm in meetings about, we wish we had different students. I don't think Aristotle was satisfied with his students, but if continuous negative feedback is what floats your boat, there's very little we can do about it. But we have to empower you to teach the students that you have and that you know who they are through data. We have to create environments that promote inclusion, because inclusion is about taking account a complex world. Example yesterday about the complexities around practical work, ethical consent, and so forth. We have to bring that in, right? That creates an enriching educational experience, and we have to be equity minded about our policies, problems, policies, programs, and practices. Now, what does equity minded mean? If you want to be in the global conversation is about how do you reduce achievement gaps between black, white, male, female, if you intersect all of that, black, white, Indian, Asian, intersection by gender. That is what the world is busy with. How to create a diverse pool of professionals that can help and role model to any generation. You can be one of us and you can be a world beater, right? So we have to think about these things. We have to look across the curriculum. There's some excellent examples from yesterday, but I'll speak about that in my reflections a bit later today. You have to cultivate an ethic of continuous improvement and collaboration. I don't need to tell people in the health sciences that a health system does not work if just one group of people does their work. Right? And our students have to understand that the only way to save people's lives, to increase the quality of their life, is by trying to be better every single day. Right? Is that something which comes through in how we teach our students? Not, I have to get 90%. I have to try to be better every single time. Right? Clarifying pathways to student success. We have to make it clear to our students how to navigate the systems. And success here, you can make it how to pass. That's not what this is saying. Student success is defined as producing a unique graduate that you can be proud of. How do you do that? How can data systems help you to identify what are the things your students are struggling with? A fascinating talk yesterday about whether students are suffering from burnout. Not so much. And then we all ask, but isn't that the staff that's suffering from burnout? Right? And the interrelationship between those two. We need to know those things. You need the evidence to take things forward. That is it.
Thank you, Professor. We have very limited time for questions, but I'm sure Professor Francois will be willing to answer questions during the course of the day, and one can always contact him at the Center for Teaching and Learning as well. Any urgent questions at this stage? Oh, then again, there's one over there.
Okay. You want to take the other question as well? Mpho.
The tutorials in the other faculties, are they also struggling to get tutors? Because that's our problem in the faculty.
Okay. So the short answer to that is it depends how you're going to link which intervention to what professional competence you want somebody to have. Right? I don't think that planning has been done. What we've started with in our work is we can tell you exactly how many students make use of what services, and we're starting to do work now on firstly, intentional integration of graduate attributes in our planning, because you can't wish that a tutorial should create a different professional if you didn't design for it. It's like, let's throw the dice. Maybe they'll be creative thinkers. You have to plan for it, right? And I don't know how often that's been done. What we want to do with the graduate attributes now is we want to start with what's the global benchmarks around critical thinking and what are the things that need to be in there. And then with rubrics, we'll assess it throughout an undergraduate program. So the short answer is no. If you want an anecdotal sense of whether I think it works, since I'm promoting an evidence-based approach, I'll refrain from giving anecdote. All right. Uh, Mpo, this is a challenge that some of the faculties are facing. Um, I think we have to look. We had a conversation, I can't remember with who now, yesterday around, I think it was with you, Gerard, in terms of are students' programs so full and we give them so much support that they have no time to study? Is that counterproductive? You have to do research to find the evidence for that. Being a tutor is one of the best things you can do for your own competence, because you only understand something if you can really explain it to somebody else, right? Those who can do, those who teach, understand. You thought I was going a different way with that, right? That's Lee Shulman from Stanford's quote. People that really understand things teach it. And giving your students the opportunity to help someone else, especially in this faculty, teaches them something about relating, the attribute linked to professional bedside manner. And if that's not part of our, if they don't participate in mentoring and tutoring, what are they missing out on? It's a question.
Thank you. We need to conclude this session. And just let's once again give Professor a hand for his